Okay, Chair, the meeting's now live.
Good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public and press. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee on the 11th of February this morning. This meeting is a remote meeting being live streamed and recorded. I'll hand over to the Democratic Services team to get the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll just start the meeting by virtue of a roll call. If anyone can indicate that they can see and hear and that they have a copy of today's agenda papers. So I'll start the roll call with Councillor Buchan.
I have all the papers that I can see in here.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yes, I've got everything, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yes, everything's fine, thanks.
Thank you. We haven't been joined by Councillor James so far this morning. Councillor Loynes.
Yes, I can see here, and I have all the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our co-opted independent member, Claire Wilson.
Yes to everything.
Thank you very much. I don't believe we have either of our parish councillors online. I do believe we also have Councillor Tony Richardson online.
Yep, present, dear.
Thank you very much. I'll just remind all members and our guests as well this morning, if you could keep your microphones on mute just to reduce the background noise to make it easier for everyone to hear what's going on. That concludes my roll call, Chairman. I'll pass back to yourself.
Thanks very much, Dave. Moving on to number 1, apologies for absence.
In light of the fact she hasn't joined, Chair, I'll submit apologies for Councillor James.
Thank you. To receive any declarations of interest by members up to now. No declarations. Confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of January 2021. Can we accept the minutes?
Yes.
Okay with that? No problems from the minutes? Okay. There was nothing on audit items in this meeting. So we moved on to Sanders items. Community governance review to Neil present the report. I think Neil Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got 2 reports this morning, both presenting feedback from the recent community governance reviews, one for Elwick and one for the Greetham Parish Councils. I'll do them in turn, so deal with the Elwick Parish Council community governance review first. The purpose of the report is to, of course, present the feedback from the recent consultation and to invite comments and views from this committee to feedback to full council on the 25th. So on the 6th of February last year, a petition was received from residents of Elwick Parish requesting that a community governance review be undertaken. The purpose of that review, or the question that was being asked, was that the area shown in Appendix 1, largely the Hartley side of Wynyard, be removed from Elwick Parish Council, and that a standalone Wynyard Parish Council, in brackets Hartlepool, be established in that area. There were 10 numbered points made in support of the petition, and they are appended to this report at Appendix 2. A review, of course, enables the council to put in place new arrangements and to make changes to the current systems and structures. And the government has emphasised that the aim of a review should be to bring about improved community engagement and more cohesive community, better local democracy, and the more convenient delivery of services. The Department for Communities and Local Government has produced guidance for principal councils when undertaking a review, and that guidance has been followed to the letter during this period of consultation. So there have been two periods of consultation, the first taking place between the 23rd of October 2020 and the 4th of December. That period was to provide draft proposals, and then a second period of consultation between the 18th of December and the 29th of January of this year. So the consultation has only recently closed, so it's a little bit of a whirlwind to take these reports to Audit and Governance, Finance and Policy, and then full council on the 25th. But the rationale behind that was in the hope of having these reviews resolved in readiness for the new municipal year. So in respect of Elwick, of the 745 consultation letters that were sent out, we received 93 responses. These responses were, of course, in addition to the initial petition that was received of 281. So we had a 12.5% response rate, and of those responses, overwhelmingly 97.8% of people were supportive of the proposal. There was actually only two people who objected to the proposal in respect of Elwick, and both of those people pointed out the additional level of bureaucracy and the costs that would be involved as the reason. So there was no real substantive objections to the actual proposal, other than the costs that would be involved in having an additional parish council. And of course, a consistent theme in support of the proposals that were put forward were that the area in question in Wynyard is a distinctive and clearly identifiable area with a cohesive character that the residents believe is completely separate to the rural nature of the rest of Elwick. Members' attention is drawn to the following issues from the DCLG guidance, and the predominant ones are that the general rule is that a parish should be based on an area which reflects a clear community identity and interest. New electoral arrangements should come into force at the next ordinary parish elections, which in respect of Elwick would be 2022. In respect of the size of a council, the DCLG guidance points to research which says that areas representing between 501 and 2,500 electors, which Wynyard does, or which Elwick does, sorry, should have between 5 and 8 parish councillors. And the National Association of Local Councils suggests that there should always be a minimum of 7 parish councillors. And that there is also, coming directly from government, a strong presumption in favour of setting up parish councils and the goal that localism is best achieved when led by the communities themselves. So the proposals for consideration by this committee is to consider whether or not the area in question, that part of Wynyard, should be removed from the rest of Elwick Parish Council. If so, are members content with the name Wynyard Parish Council Hartley? And if so, what should be the number of councillors in the new parish, and what should be the number of councillors in the remaining Elwick parish? My proposal would be that there would be 7 parish councillors in each, in accordance with the guidance. There are some financial considerations, and that is that the council currently pays a concurrent functions payment to the parish council for grass cutting services and the like of £7,446 per annum, and then that the parish undertake those tasks. It may be the case that those tasks revert to us, and the precise costs may differ from that, but it will only be a small impact on any council budgets, if any. Indeed, there could potentially even be a saving. In respect to legal considerations, of course, we do have to undertake this community governance review once we receive a valid petition. The petition was valid in that it was in excess of the 250 local electors prescribed. So that the recommendations of this report are that this committee formulates a view on the proposals, and that view is then included in the Managing Director's report that goes to full council on the 25th of February. Do any members have any questions?
Thank you very much, Neil. Yep. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. Neil, maybe I should have declared an interest because I'm ward councillor for Elwick and Wynyard and Greatham as well, which wouldn't sway my decision. But I totally agree that Wynyard should be separate from Elwick, and I agree that 7 members of the parish council should be on at any one time. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I agree too with the proposals. I think it's common sense, really, but I think that we should go with that. However, what I just want to highlight is that John Littlefair, who is a Hart parish councillor, and I know he's not involved in the 2 that we're talking about today, but it would have been good to get his sort of perspective as a parish councillor. He was a regular attender at these meetings until COVID, and I'm wondering if the virtual world that we're living in has proved a little too much for him. What I'm saying is that, has he been offered any help to get on here? Because he had an invaluable input, I think, as a parish councillor.
Okay.
I don't know whether anyone can answer that.
Like Chair.
Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, I was just to answer Brenda's question. I was actually on a Zoom meeting with Councillor John Littlefair just on Monday, so he is tech savvy.
Right. Okay.
But with regards to the borough council meetings, I'm not entirely sure, but he is tech savvy.
Right. Perhaps he doesn't have Teams.
Maybe not.
It might be something that we need to look into, because it's a shame that he can't get here, I think.
Chair, you don't actually need Teams to join these meetings. You can just join through a web browser, so it is quite easy to join. They don't need the program. Yeah.
Thanks, David. Thanks.
Just a comment about the membership of a parish council. I think it's 12 members up to 2,500 residents. I think it's quite a lot, really. But we're represented with the villagers and the parish councils, so it's pretty good to get 12 people or even 7 people into the mix of the meetings. So can we present the recommendations to the Director's report on the 20th of February? No dissent? Okay, so we move on to the other Greek community governance review to Neil.
Chair, Bob, Councillor Buchan's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Something about Buchan. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. What it is, South Fens, which is in my ward, comes under Greatham Parish. There's 3 Greatham Parish councillors live there.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So your declaration of interest?
Yes.
Okay. Right. We send the report to Neil.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, can we just, before we move on with that, just confirm that the committee is completely supportive of the change in arrangements, that it's supportive of 7 members in both of those parish councils, just for clarity for Neil's report.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In respect of the Greatham report, I won't go through the details again. The same principles apply and the same guidance applies. In respect of Greatham, a valid petition of 257 residents this time was received by the council on the 5th of March last year. Again, there was 2 periods of consultation, and those periods were the same periods as were for Elwick. 925 consultation letters were sent out, and they were sent out on the proposal that the South Fens area be removed from Greetham Parish Council. And unlike the earlier Wynyard proposal, it wasn't proposed that any alternative parish council be established, simply that they no longer belong to that parish. So there was 257 residents who had proposed that and who sought that. 925 consultation letters were sent out. 92 responses were received. That was a 10% response. Of those responses, again, quite a high proportion of people, 77%, which was 71 people, supported the proposal, and 17 people, which was 19%, were opposed to it. Around 4 people expressed no strong opinion either way. And these, again, were in addition to the 257 residents of the area who signed the originating petition. A common theme of those who were supporting the proposal was that the South Fens view themselves as being part of a separate, distinctive, cohesive unit, which identifies more with the larger Fens area rather than the more rural Greetham village aspect. Of all of those people who objected, again, the common theme was that the status quo should be maintained. What is the purpose of incurring extra costs in changing things, that it's been like that for quite a while? Those who originated this petition pointed to the fact that the South Fens pay a precept, which is £4.73 per year, and that they didn't believe that they got value for that money, in that they suspected that most of the money was being spent on the Greetham village itself. The balance of councillors sitting on the parish council was actually 4 parish councillors from the South Fens area, with only 3 from Greetham. So there shouldn't have ever been that imbalance on the basis of voting patterns, but it was perceived in any event, and it was largely supported by all of those who've been consulted upon. So the proposals for consideration by this committee, again, are essentially should the South Fens area be removed from Greetham Parish Council, and if so, what should be the size of the remaining Greetham Parish Council? It's currently 7 parish councillors. I'd propose that it stays as 7. Again, financial considerations in respect of the concurrent functions. Currently, the local authority pays £1,385 per annum. That may change and it'll be subject to review if we do take over grass cutting functions and the like again. So again, the recommendations are that this committee formulates a view on the proposals outlined, and that view be reported to full council in the Managing Director's report for the 25th. Do members have any particular questions on this one?
No problems. So for clarity, is the membership of the parish council from 7 now? Greetham would be 7 after that.
Yes, that's what I'm proposing, Chair. On the basis that the minimum number proposed by the National Association is 7.
Okay. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Again, I'm Ward Councillor for Greetham as well. As I said earlier, I agree that South Fens should be removed from the Greetham parish, and I agree also with you, Neil, that there should be seven members on the committee, on the parish committee. Thank you.
Right. So dissent to put the recommendations to full council on the 25th of February. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. In that case, I'll report that it was unanimously supported by this committee, both proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Neil. So we move on to 5.2. Review of sanctions currently in place for Councillor Tony Richardson. Report to Hayley.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, members. This report follows a referral from full council on the 28th. I'm sorry, have I frozen? Can you all still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you, Hayley.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So sorry, yeah, this follows a referral from full council on the 28th of January, where members were asked to consider a proportionality review, and which resulted in a number of committee seats becoming available. During the course of the discussions, Councillor Tony Richardson and Governance Committee recommendations from January 2020 regarding a breach of the Member Code of Conduct, that the sanctions approved by full council in June 2020 one of them would prevent him from putting himself forward, and that sanction is set out at paragraph 2.3, in that full council resolved that Councillor Tony Richardson should not be appointed as a member of any committee for the remainder of his current term of office. In light of Councillor Tony Richardson's request to contest a number of the nominations for the committee seats, Audit and Governance are asked to consider the recommendations at paragraph 3 as to whether, once reviewed, whether the recommendation should be that the sanctions should be lifted, or whether they should continue until, now that we have had the announcement that the election is going to go ahead, whether they should continue until May. So members' views are invited, and if you've got any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
I would like the sanctions to remain in place until the May elections. I've got nothing else to say except that.
Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it states quite clearly when we did this before in Audit and Governance that the sanctions would stay in place for the remainder of Councillor Tony Richardson's current term of office. And that would take us up to the end of this municipal year. It's not very long to go. You know, if it was another year, we might review it, but it's not. It's a couple of months, if that. So I think they should stay in place until then. Thank you.
Councillor Buchan.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Councillor Richardson. Basically, Tony, have you undertaken all training that you were required to do in this matter?
Yes, I've took the equality and diversity training. I've took 2 IT courses and passed all of them. I have a further IT course which was put forward for January, but with the COVID, it's been cancelled till March, which I will be sitting. I'm also at the moment taking the course on the Localism Act, and there's other acts that I'm taking together with it as well.
Thank you, Tony. That's what I needed to know.
Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm in agreement with keeping it to the end of the term, but I think in future, hopefully this won't happen again. But if it does, I think we should stipulate what year it is, because obviously we're in unprecedented times now, and it's been going on for a long time. So I think we should say like May 21 or May 22 or whatever in future. But because there's not much time to go now, and I believe there's very few committee meetings as well before we go into PERDA, I think we should leave it at May. And as I say, I have no problem with Councillor Richardson whatsoever. But I think that was the right thing to do, to wait until May and then see what happens then. Thank you.
Thank you. My viewpoint is time flies. And it was a year ago that this committee recommended investigation onto Councillor Tony Richardson. Over several months, Councillor Richardson apologised publicly for shocking social media posts and attended diversity training and IT awareness. My personal viewpoint is that the sanctions on the councillor should be lifted and make an application to sit on committees if applicable. So I think we have to vote on the Councillor Harrison.
Yes, Chair, thanks. Can I just say that I think it's great that the training has taken place and that Councillor Tony Richardson has actually engaged with everything that was asked. But I still go back to what was said, and I think Councillor Loynes is quite right that perhaps in future a more stipulated date could be given, but we didn't foresee this year happening. But the current term of office and whatever has been done to address some of the issues that have arisen, I don't think takes away from what was stated by us some time ago. So I know the current term of office is longer than we'd expected, but that's what it says. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments? John?
Thank you, Chair. I think given the difference of opinions expressed across the committee, it would be prudent to ask members to vote as to say whether they wish the sanctions should stay in place, or whether they should be removed. So, David, would it be possible for you to run through the council attendance and ask for a vote in favour or against the removal of the sanctions?
Yes, certainly, that's no problem. So the proposal that we have on the table is whether or not the sanctions in relation to Councillor Tony Richardson should be lifted or remained in place. I think we should vote on the maintenance of the current sanctions. So if people indicate if they're for the maintenance of the current sanctions or if they are against, in which case they're supporting them lifted. So I shall run through the list of members we have present. Councillor Buchan.
Against.
Councillor Cassidy.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Hall.
For.
That's for them remaining in place, Chair.
No, against. For the
you want them left?
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Hamilton.
Yes, I want those sanctions to remain in place.
Oh. Councillor Harrison.
For.
We have apologies from Councillor James. Councillor Loynes.
For.
So that's 3 for the sanctions remaining in place and 2 against. Chair.
Okay. Thanks.
So that will be included in the report that is submitted to Council.
On the 25th of February?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Right. We're moving on to rejig the agenda. 6.3, health scrutiny. Coronavirus in Hartley, Poole. Craig. See you about.
Yeah, I'm here, Chair. Thank you very much. I'll just try and share my screen with you, and thank you for accommodating me a little earlier. It's much appreciated, and I'll just try and share my presentation with you at the moment. So is everyone able to see the presentation there?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, this is you'll be familiar with the slides and what I'm going to talk to you about in terms of the current COVID rate in Hartlepool. As you can see, obviously we continue to see cases coming through, but I think what I will have and will give to you today is some slightly more positive news about where we actually are. You can see generally we continue in Hartlepool as the blue line to have a higher number of higher rate of cases per 100,000 population than overall in England throughout the entire pandemic. As you see, it's slightly higher there, and we've obviously discussed previously the various reasons as to why that may be the case in terms of the deprivation, the type of employment we have, and all of those factors within Hartlepool. So, you know, we are sort of obviously still concerned about the higher rate there that we see. Moving on to what was flagged up as potentially more positive news is that we've seen the cases come down quite significantly, and the graphs there show you at the top the weekly totals, rolling totals of England cases, and at the bottom there the cases in Hartlepool. And you can see we've sort of reflect a very similar pattern, but I think one of the things to flag up at this point is that a few weeks ago, particularly around about the end of December, the beginning of January, I think we were seeing very high numbers of cases coming through. I think we were around about in some parts, you know, nearly towards the 900 per 100,000 cases, and I think we've come down quite significantly now since then through the hard work of all of the residents in sort of abiding by the lockdown restrictions and all of the regulations. And you know, it's really pleasing to see that at this point in time we've come down to around about, I think yesterday was 209 cases per 100,000. So that's a really significant drop. I think what I do need to stress though at the moment that it's 209, whilst that's, you know, excellent, and you know, we've come down from that significant high, 209 is still very high. We need to get that down still quite significantly before we come out of the lockdown restrictions. I think we were around about that level when the last lockdown was lifted, and I think that sort of obviously contributes towards the increases potentially if you know, that occurs. So my aim is that we get those numbers down, you know, a lot further, and I think, you know, it's a positive thing that at the moment we're seeing that trajectory come down quite steeply. So you know, we need to still work hard to keep the restrictions going and keep all of the social distancing, the hand hygiene and wearing masks in the appropriate places happening, you know, as we progress towards what may be, you know, if there are the restrictions whenever they're due to come in. So I think it's really positive news, and we did have a small increase last week, which I think was picked up by the media. Some of you may be aware of that, but then we generally will be expected to see some fluctuations in the numbers as we progress. So I wasn't really that over concerned about the small spike there, and we did investigate where that occurred, and you know, there was nothing out of the ordinary. I think that gave us any concern, and as we have progressed over this week, we've seen the numbers decrease, you know, still further, which is really good news. Unfortunately, yeah, we do still see numbers of people dying, and unfortunately, the COVID-related death rates are higher for us than England again overall. But again, we are starting to see a decline in those numbers, which we would expect to see as we progress. So it's a lagging indicator, and as our case numbers come down, so a few weeks later, we hope to see the hospital numbers come down, and then subsequently we'll see reductions in the number of deaths, which again we hope will be a positive reduction in that overall rate. What we're seeing in Hartlepool, the picture continues to be relatively the same, actually, from the last time I came to speak to you about this. We are seeing the cases are reflecting the population, where our main areas of population are, and we continue to monitor those and sort of look to see if there's any additional factors that need to be put in, and we are looking at particularly around some of the testing work we're doing to see how we can localize that and be more effective at reaching people in some of the areas where we might expect to see some hot spots. But again, it does reflect the general population, and we do get regular information on a daily basis to indicate if there are any challenges in any particular areas that we need to address. And what you'll see from the next slide is that the testing's pretty much, again, covers those areas. You can see we've got higher levels of testing in the centre where, you know, we have high numbers of population occurring. And so again, our testing levels have been holding up. We have started to see fewer people being tested, not to any great concern at the moment, but I think, again, it may be a reflection that obviously if we're having fewer people with symptoms coming through, then we won't get to we won't need to test as many people. Our positivity rates are still quite high, around about 10 to 11%, which is moderately high as well, but that has come down from, closer to 20 when we were having the very high rates in the town. So it's generally, again, it's starting to be a positive picture. I would still sort of reiterate the point that, the 209 that we had yesterday per 100,000 is still high. We need to bring that down significantly. I think just on the testing side, you'll probably be aware that we've launched our community testing at the Millhouse Leisure Centre, which is seeing quite a few people coming through, but we can obviously get more people through, and that's asymptomatic testing. So testing for people who don't have symptoms, but are able to book through our online booking system to go and get tested. And we're particularly interested in focusing on those people who have to come to work. So those people who can't work from home, and also maybe in contact with other people, other members of the population. So we've put a call out to businesses to get them to sort of engage with us on that, and sort of help their staff to get regular testing. And we have been finding cases through that as well, which is a positive as well, because that means we can stop the chain of transmission as they progress. So that's generally the case where we're up to. I think just a mention of vaccines, because some of you probably will ask about that. We don't ourselves within public health run the vaccine programme, but obviously we're in contact with the CCG who are running the vaccine programme, and you'll probably be aware that we've had some very high uptakes in those groups that have been vaccinated so far, and I think that's really positive for Hartlepool. And I think particularly once the process started early in Hartlepool and over Christmas, we've seen very high numbers of people being vaccinated, so that's very positive as well, and I hope we will start to see that coming through the data as we progress. So there are some, I think, to sum up, I think there are some positives at the moment. We're not out of the woods by any means at the moment. There's been a massive effort since Christmas on behalf of the population to bring these numbers down. It's really positive that we're at the level we are now, but we still have quite a lot to do. And I think the main message is keep going. There is some chinks of light at the end of the tunnel, and we just need to make sure that we maintain the current guidance and restrictions. Thank you very much. I'll try and take this off.
Craig. I know there's a lot of positivity at the moment in Hartlepool at the moment. But what about some of the variants? Can we detect any of the new variants, like South Africa, Kent, different areas of vaccine and variants of the cases?
We are obviously keeping an eye out for those. We know that the Kent variant, which is the more transmissible British variant, we do know that is in circulation in Hartlepool at the moment, and it does make up. What happens is a proportion of positive tests are tested, and then they identify what percentage of those are actually of the particular variant. And the Kent variant, I think the last data that I received had about 74% of those cases that were tested were the more transmissible British variant. I think it's important to say that that's not all the tests that are tested for that. So it's just really an indicator. And we are obviously monitoring that as and when we get information.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of debate about the vaccines with the variants at the moment. Some of them could be percentages, 60%, 70%, 90%. But I know there's some of the controversy on some of the vaccines as well.
There is. I think what's important to remember is obviously this is we are in a new situation. It's a novel COVID virus, and the technology is there that gives us a reasonably confident feeling that they will tackle some of these. I think what we've got to bear in mind is, and I think it's important to remember when you see some of these news reports, is that it's to look at the information behind them and try and work out exactly what's happened with the research studies that have contributed to those media reports. I think one of the, I'm trying to remember now actually which one it was, as it's completely slipped my mind, unfortunately, so I apologise, but I think it was one of the more recent ones, possibly from Germany, suggesting that it was there was a 10%, it had only caught 10% reduction in the severity of cases, I believe. What that, I think, indicated was within a very small study. And so I think obviously these early studies are very important in terms of guiding the research. But obviously, generally when we do, or when studies are carried out, if you do it on a very small population, there's a higher chance of it not being statistically significant in the results. And so that's why we look for the studies that have, large numbers of people involved in them. So the original studies had, tens of thousands of people involved in the trials, and it's not to decry the smaller studies, but actually it gives you an indicator of what might be needed to research further. So it is a bit of a mixed picture, but I think there is generally confidence that the vaccines either will be able to work to some degree of effectiveness against any new variants, but also that there is work going on to look at them to see if they need to be adapted as we progress through the next few months and years, because again, COVID is likely to be with us for a long time, and it may be that you'll be familiar with different flu vaccines being introduced each year. And again, that's a similar process, whereas the virus will mutate slightly, and so the vaccines will be adapted to cover that. So it's kind of a long and roundabout way of saying that it's a spectrum at the moment, but the government seems to be confident that actually the vaccines at the moment will cover what we see circulating.
Interesting comment in one of the media about flu deaths, because a lot of flu deaths are disappeared or very low because of the sanitizing and washing hands or whatever, maybe extinguish the flu virus. That's a very interesting comment.
I think extinguish is a bit optimistic, I think, to be honest, but yes, when you consider that flu is a respiratory virus, and actually what we're doing at the moment is a significant amount of work to help people to protect against a respiratory virus, what we're actually seeing is those measures are preventing flu as well. I think, interestingly, possibly as we come out of this and into more normal situations, I think some of the lessons learned from this virus could help us to prevent potentially flu as well in the future. If we all get into the habit of washing our hands, and more effectively, that kind of thing would help in the future as well.
Thanks very much. Any comments? So no. Thanks very much, Craig, and very valuable presentation, and some of the optimistic at the moment, happy Poole as well.
Yeah.
So thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye now.
Right. We'll move on to 6.1. C. Troubled Families Programme. Can we have a presentation on troubled families?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to take this report.
Jane, thanks.
Thank you. So, in terms of this report, it was to just need to get my report up because the agenda has changed. Just a second. Right, so this report provides an overview of the Troubled Families Programme, known locally as Think Family, and the positive impact it's had on families with multiple and complex needs since its inception in 2012. The report says details of what is currently known about the extension of Programme 22 is also outlined in the report. We do now have confirmation that there will be a further year of the Troubled Families Programme, so we're really pleased with that. So the report really was to provide committee with an update in terms of the programme up to date, and I think it's a really positive report and highlights some real success stories for Hartley Poole. We're really pleased with the way that the programme has been delivered. if we take it to 5.4, we were mandated to identify and secure positive outcomes for 1,000 families. And obviously at the time, we recognise that that's difficult to be able to manage within one team. And so in phase 1, we focused around it being one team that was undertaking the majority of the work. So once we moved into phase 2, we went to the high level of 1,000 families. We've mainstreamed that, so it's really a cross council activity really to support this work, and we're really pleased that we managed to exceed the targets that were set, and we were, as it says in 5.2, we were the top performing authority in the North East for positive outcomes. There's information in 6.1 that highlights the some of the data involved and the progress that have been made. And in 7.1, the transfer form third phase of the programme was planned for April 2020. That didn't happen because of partly to do with Brexit, and then so we're given an extra year of the current programme. We thought that would change, and we would have a new programme, or it may well be different, but COVID has obviously impacted on that as well. So currently, we on the 28th of January, we were advised that the funding will continue for a further year. And it was, I think it's been recognised nationally that it's been a really positive programme. Not all local authorities have performed as well as it could be, and the MCLG has identified that and is focusing their support to ensure all authorities do meet the outcomes. We are pleased that we have managed to do that. And it is through good partnership working with the Community Safety Hub, and right across the council as well, with Cleveland Police, with the Department of Work and Pensions. We feel that the model that we've managed to create and implement has meant that we've got shared accountability and focus on this programme, and I think that's why we've exceeded the targets that we were given, and that's a really positive outcome for Hartley Poole. So just to conclude, we have got a further 12 months extension now. We're already identifying those families and already actively working to be able to meet the positive outcomes that the programme expects of us. And we're just like committee to note the contents of the report, and if anybody has any questions. But myself, Ronnie Checksfield and Kelly Prescott, who are responsible for the day-to-day running of the project, I'm sure one of us will be able to answer your question. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jane. Yes, again, I think in the report about Hartley Poole is punching above its weight at the moment. I remember 10 years on the Covenant, we had the Truman Families programme there 10 years ago, and now it's still ongoing. I just mentioned some of the statistics here. I mean, when you're looking at 5.1, 290 families met the criteria. On 6.4 was about 1,000 families. 6.6 on 324 families. And then 8.2 was 1.168. So I know there's a massive range from figures in there. Can you just comment on the depth of knowledge of troubled families, or is it a broad brush with a lot of numbers in the statistics?
Would you like me to come in, Jane, at this point?
Yeah, that's fine, Ronnie. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Chair. Ronnie Checksfield. Yeah, the numbers are actually given to us by MHCLG. They stipulate the target number of families that we have to work with. So that the figure of 290 was given to us in phase 1. Once again, 1,000 was stipulated. 168 was stipulated in the extended year. So we're given those numbers by government. That's what we have to work with. So obviously, as you can see, we worked with 1,324 in the main body of the programme. We were identified 1,000 families. So to achieve positive turnaround in 1,000 families, we obviously have to work with and identify a lot more families to get that 1,000. And that's where those numbers fluctuate slightly. It's not targets we set, it's targets that are set by government for us to achieve. And in this further extended year, it's 175 families.
And I think it is important to say that what we do as across the whole authority really is we are working to be able to bring in the additional, to meet the outcomes and bring in the additional funding to the council. But actually what's really important is we are working to achieve these outcomes for all of our families, regardless of whether they end up being able to be claimed for in terms of the PBR. And that's, I think that's one of the essential things, and this is why we talk about it being mainstream. Everybody working with families has a focus on making sure that we can achieve these outcomes, because, you know, regardless of whether we can bring money in, which is really, really important, it is also about it's a difference it makes for families. And so our work is really about making the difference with families. And so we're evidencing it through the work that we're doing, not because of it, if I'm making sense.
Thanks very much, Jane. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think Jane's just answered the questions that I had really, and Ronnie between them. I was going to pick up on a similar thing to what you've just said, Chair. When you look at 5.1 there, you've got those 3 criteria, and my question was, there'll be other families in need of this support that don't necessarily fit into those criteria, but I think you've kind of answered that. And can I just say that it again reflects the very positive and supportive ethos that is throughout the council towards our more vulnerable people. And I think that everyone involved in this needs a big congratulations. So thank you very much for doing what you've been doing.
Councillor Leslie Hamilton.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions to ask, if that's okay. I don't know who wants to answer this question, but I'll start with the first one. Many of the vulnerable children engaged with the Troubled Family programmes have suffered 4 or more ACEs, which impacts significantly on their long-term life chances. What are troubled families doing to counteract these adverse childhood experiences in order to help them transition from childhood and into adulthood, and importantly into the world of education and work?
That's a difficult one, Leslie. Thank you for that. I think I think, as I said earlier, we mainstreamed the Troubled Families programme really. So it's everybody's business, the Troubled Families programme. So in terms of our early help workers, our social workers, our youth offending workers, our health visit and school nurses, right across the whole of the authority really, what we are always working towards reducing the impact of those adverse childhood experiences. What the Troubled Families kind of the funding brings is we have additional resource that we use the funding for in terms of some of the direct support to families through early help and through social workers, but also through alliance contract in terms of mental health that we bring that additionality in to support the mental health of parents in particular and of children. So we're able to use that resource where we think it will help, you know, promote positive outcomes for family. We also fund through Harbour some of the domestic abuse work that is focused to be able to do that. So within the programme itself, we're trying to address the issues of adverse childhood experiences on many levels. And I think that's evident in the progress we've made. Okay,
sorry, Leslie. I just wanted to add to that as well that once the family have achieved the positive outcomes, we don't just abandon them. We continue to monitor those families through multi-agency working and multi-agency information. So once that family's gotten into a good place, we don't then just step back. We continue to monitor and we make sure that those outcomes continue.
Right. Can I just ask what you mean by in a good place?
So, well, I suppose what I mean by that is they have met the targets that are set by central government through the Think Families Outcomes Plan. So issues around antisocial behaviour, drug and alcohol, domestic violence, those targets are pretty much set for us by central government. So what we do is we work to help those families achieve those targets and exceed them. So once we get a family into a position where they're no longer experiencing some of the issues that they were, so for example, if we take antisocial behaviour as an example, if once we get a family into a position where they're no longer causing antisocial behaviour, children aren't putting themselves in risky positions, we continue to monitor those families. We don't just step back and that's it, that's job done. We continue to work and monitor those families to make sure that they maintain those achievements.
Okay, thank you for that, Chair. Can I just ask a couple more questions, please? It moves seamlessly onto what you've just said. The Troubled Families programme was instrumentally designed to get families living in poverty into meaningful employment and really not to become dependent upon the welfare state. How many of the families involved with your service have you helped into employment since its inception? Bearing in mind 168 families have achieved positive outcomes as recently as December 2020.
Kelly, I'll jump in here. 86 families to date. We've got from worklessness into employment, and then add to that, we have a seconded DWP worker seconded into the Troubled Families. It's a national process. All local authorities have the worker allocated to them, and she's responsible for working directly with those families where there's worklessness issues. It's looking at progress to work, so moving families so they're on the cusp of being eligible for work, moving families into employment. Also, at the same time, ensuring families are getting the entitlements they're entitled to as far as benefits and so on and so forth. So at the moment, as we speak, 86 families have moved off benefits and into employment, and a lot of other areas around that have been covered as well.
Can I just ask, those 86 families, is that from its inception? Is that from 2012?
No, that's phase 2 of the programme.
So what date would that be from?
2015.
Right, 2015. Okay. Final question from me, please, Chair, if that's okay. Can I just quickly ask 12.1 feedback? You say in the report that you received feedback from just 24 families. Why so few in the feedback if there's been such a positive programme, particularly when 8.6 states that Hartley Poole reached its target of supporting 168 families to achieve positive outcomes by December 20? That number is not a high number of feedback when you think it's been, when you look at the recent positive outcomes in December 2020. So can somebody explain that, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, Jane, go on.
Just to say, this is obviously the programme is mainstreamed. So, and this is something that we've thought about in terms of making sure that we actually routinely get some feedback in relation to the programme, because we are receiving feedback from families through all of our work, and what we haven't done, I think, maybe as effectively as we could be doing it, is actually drawing that feedback from each of the individual areas coming back into the centre in terms of troubled families. So I think, you're right, Leslie. For me, I think we missed a trick there, because in other areas of our audits, we know that feedback's there. We just haven't drawn it into the centre as well as we could have done.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want to.
Yeah. Can I just come in there, Jane? I think you're right there, and the problem you've got is these feedback sheets are so important, particularly when hoping to achieve more funding, because the government do look at that. And so I suppose what I'm trying to say is you are missing a trick, and if there's good work going on, that's not reflected in the feedback sheets, and really you could be shooting yourself in the foot there.
Yeah, I agree, Leslie. We are collecting it, but we're not bringing it. We haven't brought it routinely back into the centre. So, for example, when we in our early help world, we have feedback regularly. At the end of whatever intervention we've got that feedback there. And what I think what we need to do is start to routinely bring that back into the centre, so we can evidence it. We're just not collecting it in the way that would demonstrate the level of feedback we've got. Ronnie, I don't know whether you wanted to come in as well.
Sorry, I was talking to myself there. I was on mute. Yeah, exactly as you've said, Jane. Feedback is being sought. It's exactly as Jane said. We probably need to improve our collection of that feedback, and then how we produce that and feed that back through processes. Ultimately, of those initial feedback that we collected, I actually went round and collected those personally from a neutral perspective. So for that process, I wasn't asking workers and direct key workers to go and collect that data. I went round and visited those families. There was no way, there was no chance on earth I was going to get around 1,324 families. I'd still be there now, to be perfectly honest. However, obviously, it's an area we need to improve, and it's something we can do to update that feedback, and we'll ensure that gets done.
Yeah, I think in terms of future funding, I think that's where you need to look in terms of maybe securing funding. That's the world I work in now, and I know that the government take these feedback sheets very seriously. And so maybe that's something you need to look at later on, or as moving forward in the next year, if you've received money for another 12 months.
Yeah,
all right, thank you,
you,
Chair.
Leslie.
I've asked everything. Yeah, thank you.
Leslie, yeah, Jane, I think you mentioned money about how many people in the department to address this Troubled Families programme.
It isn't necessarily based on people, it's everybody's responsibility, Chair. So there are some specific posts within there, but and we have quite we have quite a bit of commission services to support it, but I think this is the key area about it being mainstream, and I think that's maybe why it's been so successful. We haven't been reliant on individuals as such. The message that we give to our workforce is these outcomes are everybody's business, so everyone's working towards it.
And you can combine with children's services and adult services, obviously, in the family.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Any comments? So recommendations is to note the report, and well done from the Jane and the team addressing troubled families.
Chair, sorry, can I just add a quick one there, Chair, please, if you don't mind? I think it's probably pertinent to the minutes as well, is that last year we achieved 100% of our quota of 168 families, and given that the year we had last year, nationally, locally and regionally, I think testament to all the officers and all the staff that were working with those families, I think is an outstanding achievement to get 100%. I think the minutes should reflect that as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned this morning that Hartley Poole punches its weight in all areas in Hartley Poole, even they get recognition from central government even. So, very much. Okay. Going back to the agenda, 6.1A, Antisocial Behaviour Action Plan. Is that Joan or?
Thank you, Chair. It's myself, Sylvia. Yes. This report is to provide members with an update in relation to the development of the action plan in response to this committee's investigation into antisocial behaviour. At a meeting of the Safer Hartley Poole Partnership on the 4th of September, yourself, Chair, attended the committee and presented the detailed report highlighting its findings and recommendations of this committee in relation to antisocial behaviour in Hartlepool. And at the meeting, the Safer Hartlepool Partnership agreed to those recommendations and that it would determine an action plan would be developed and brought back to the Safer Hartlepool Partnership. The action plan was due to be taken to the committee, Safer Hartlepool Partnership, in November. However, unfortunately, due to other commitments, that didn't happen, and we took it to their next meeting, which was on the 22nd of January. And the partners there agreed to the delivery of the action plan. The recommendations of the Audit and Governance Committee have been placed into this action plan, and details have been provided by the partners responsible, and this is attached in Appendix 1 to your report today. In addition, antisocial behaviour has been identified by the Safer Hartlepool Partnership as one of its 3 priorities in its community safety plan for 2021. And also the strategic assessment that's been used to develop the plan for 2021 to 2024 will also recommend that antisocial behaviour remains a key priority in that plan. Multi-agency working groups have been set up to assist in relation not only to this action plan, but also due to antisocial behaviour being a priority within the community safety plan. And they're looking at how we work together to tackle antisocial behaviour in Hartlepool. In addition, we've also put in place a multi-agency group that will also deal with fly tipping. Updates on these working groups will be included in the action plan to show members how progress is taking place, and further reports will be provided to this committee in relation to that. To give you a little bit of a further update, the group that's been set up in relation to antisocial behaviour had its first meeting on the 13th of January. That was well attended by partners, and they have identified 3 priority areas themselves that they want to work on, which are problems with off-road vehicles, drugs and fire setting. In addition, the group that's been set up in relation to fly tipping has had 2 meetings, and they are currently exploring a range of issues, and they're focusing their work around education, prevention and enforcement. The detailed action plan, as I say, is attached in Appendix 1, and if members require any further information in relation to the matters that are mentioned there, I'm happy to provide that, and the recommendation that members note this report.
Thanks very much, Sylvia. A couple of questions or comments. There's an undercurrent in the report about schools, and of course, schools are closed, depending on COVID at the moment. Obviously, you'll be getting to schools in the future, and then that'll be hopefully in normal times. A lot of the ASBAD and the Crucial Crew were introduced in secondary schools and primary schools, and again, you know, see in the future. When you're talking about a meeting in mid-January, how many attendees of the organisations?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact minutes to hand with the attendees, but attendees were there from a number of partner agencies and others within the council. So 13 group were there. We had representatives from the police. We had a number of representatives from other parts of the local authority, not just the community safety side. So we had Zoe McKenna was there in relation to the work that they're doing in working with young people and their outreach service. Ronnie Chexfield, that you've just heard from, he was there, attended the meeting. So it was a wide-ranging meeting of everybody that was being identified in relation to having a role within antisocial behaviour. So it was a number of partners that were there. It wasn't just a local authority meeting. Similarly, the meetings that are being held in relation to fly tipping are involving external groups that are going out and doing litter picks, etc. They are involved in those meetings as well. So what we're trying to do is to get everybody that's got an interest or an involvement in relation to these areas involved in the meetings.
One of the items today was 13, but I think it's deferred to March next meeting, so look forward to that. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Sylvia, I just wondered if there was anyone from education represented on that meeting that you've been talking about, because you know, we keep banging on the same drum, really. But I think a lot of schools have not engaged, and this is before COVID, with the programmes that are on offer. And as Councillor Lyons has said before, they're really good programmes. I think all children should be privy to them. And I think that it should, I know we can't make it mandatory, but it should be really stressed that it's a very important part of their education from primary up to secondary. So I wondered if there was a representation from education there, because perhaps that's something that could be thought about.
I would have to refer back to the minutes to check exactly who was there. I'm not certain that there was a representative from the education side, although that might have been covered by somebody else. Some people are representing their teams more widely. So yeah, but obviously there are aspects in relation to your action plan that do cover education and the specific officers that have been tasked with dealing with those areas.
Thanks. Claire, did you have your hand up? Claire Wilson. No.
Sorry, no. It looked as if I had...
Only hand on the screen. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Harrison said, I have been to a few of the ASBAD days, and I think they're absolutely fantastic. I mean, my husband and I went to the last one. Wouldn't have been last year, it'd been the year before. And it was amazing how it's put across to the children. It's done in a serious but fun way, and I think it should be continued throughout, like the junior school as well, not just senior school. And it is amazing. Like I say, it's put away across in a serious but a fun way, and there's different classrooms that deal with different areas of antisocial behaviour. It's really good. On the note of fly tipping, usually a Sunday I get a phone call, a text or whatever off residents complaining about fly tipping down the crossroads at Dalton, and that road, you know, leading to Dalton, leading to Elwick, leading to the 179, and it's getting to be annoying. I mean, one morning, it was my daughter that rang me and said, "Mum, I'm going to send you photographs because there's somebody who's tipped a load of papers out and it's got their names on." So I phoned the council, obviously, immediately, and they got somebody up. And I just hope that we are finding people and we are taking them to court, because it's getting out of hand. It really is. I mean, the papers, sometimes there's mattresses, there's three-piece suites, there's bedroom furniture. Somebody must see them somewhere. I have asked for CCTV cameras up there, because I think we should be able to catch some of them. I've been up at different times of the day when I've been well enough, and I never managed to catch somebody. They're either doing it during the night in darkness or early morning. And I just wondered how you can cope with this, Sylvia. You know, how you can step up the mark type of thing to contact these people and find them.
Yeah, I'll deal with the ASBAD one first.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we don't believe that we will be able to run ASBAD this year because of circumstances. But I have been having some discussions with the team to see if there's any way we can do some of that in a virtual way. which might be the other option for us to look at, knowing and moving forward. And that might be that it may not be possible to have ASBAD for primary schools and secondary schools moving forward, but some of it could be done in a virtual way, so that material is available to them. So that's something that I'm asking the team to look at and see with partners that are involved in that. Is there something we can put in place because of the circumstances we're currently in? So that is one that is on our agenda, and I know it's down in there is some information in the action plan about ASBAD, and members are keen to see that to continue. Yeah. In relation to the fly tipping, yes, all of our cameras are currently deployed. We have CCTV cameras that we use really quite overtly in some locations, so that the cameras out there, we do put signage up or let residents know in certain areas that the cameras are out, and we do use those to our fullest effect. They are normally targeted in the areas where we get most complaints from, but officers do go out whenever there is anything that's identified as fly tipping, and they will look through to see if they can find evidence to support where it's come from and start an investigation in relation to that. So that is actively carried out as well.
Good. Okay, thank you.
John?
Thank you, Chair. Sort of as a conclusion to Sylvia's presentation there, really, it's just to assure with the committee that the monitoring of how your recommendations are undertaken and the progress of those will come back to this committee on a 6-monthly basis. We are very committed to ensuring that that they are not lost and that they are progressed as you would wish to see them progressed, or that if there are any issues with implementing them, that you are made aware of what those issues will be. Following on from one of your other recommendations around antisocial behaviour, Sylvia and I have been working on identifying potential slops in March for the training that you asked for as a result of the councillor call for action piece of work that you did on noise nuisance. So members will be receiving invites of Audit and Governance. Members of Audit and Governance will be receiving invites to a session in March on that. And then just to give you an assurance that we have Sylvia and myself have organised for the issue of member awareness around processes for reporting antisocial behaviour to be included in the member development session. So there will be a session for members at the very early start of the new municipal year to ensure that members know what, where, how, what they can expect, and what's realistic in terms of response. So it's just to make sure that members are aware that we are progressing all the areas that you've identified, and in addition to concluding the work in this year, we'll be taking it forward into the new municipal year as well.
Okay, thanks, Joan. Any comments, Leslie? No.
No.
Okay. Right. So we move on to the presentation from. There's nothing from 13. It will be 6.1C. No, it's 6.3. Can't find it. 6.2. Harbour Support Services that we got there. So who's presenting Harbour? Danielle.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come along and provide you with an update. So we have been operating throughout COVID, and as you can imagine, there has been the challenges from the start of the first lockdown. Going back to the beginning, like the end of March time, we didn't see an increase at all in our referrals, which was we were quite surprised by this, and also quite concerned, because there was the issue that we were unsure if victims knew that we were still open for business and if we were still able to support victims of domestic abuse, and also whether our refuges were still open. So we did a lot of work right at the beginning of the pandemic around sharing information, raising awareness, and making sure that people were aware that we were still here to support them on social media, through our website, and working with partners. One of the things that we did implement pretty quickly was our live chat facility, which meant that if people were in a household whereby they were living with the perpetrator and were unable to get to the phone and speak freely, they could contact us through live chat. One of the things we pointed out also was that if they were to visit our website and use live chat, there is a safety exit button which could immediately take them off the website, and it deletes all history on the computer, and it automatically takes them to a weather page, which was another thing that we wanted to share with the public, really, because sometimes using technology in the household, if it's not safe to do so, could be a further risk. We did make it very clear that we were open for support, and after a couple of weeks of really plugging this on, like I say, all of our social media platforms and with partner agencies, we then did see a steady incline of referrals, which has remained all the way through. We're seeing approximately a 20 to 25% increase in referrals, but what we're also seeing is an increase in the complexity of our referrals. So there are a lot more cases with significant mental health problems, significant drug and alcohol problems. And as a result of that, people are staying within our service for a longer period of time, which is meaning that the throughput of our referrals has been under pressure. Our refuges have remained as normal. We put some very tight operational guidelines and policies in place around the admittance of new residents and our current residents. So, for example, we have full PPE for all staff and for residents to use. We have hand wash and sanitizer facilities all the way through the refuges, and temperature thermometer gauges. We have operated a no visitors policy because of the risk of transmission and the concerns around that. And that in itself has brought around, because what we are hearing from the victims that we're working with is that these feelings of isolation, I think what we're all impacted by in some respects in our own personal lives too, is quite isolating, lonely. At times can affect everybody's mental health. And for victims of domestic abuse who've already left their home, who are already impacted by the fear and loss of a lot of practical material and relationships, it's been a really tough time. So within the refuges, what we've done to try and combat that is we've provided extra shifts. So we now operate twilight shifts on an evening, which was enabled by a welcomed funding stream, what came through from the local authority to assist us with this. And it's meant that during these twilight shifts, they're not necessarily work of the support workers, but we're aiming those more on activities and things to help with boredom, things to help with the confidence and those isolated feelings that they are impacted by. They have helped with quite a lot of antisocial behaviour within the refuges too, because alcohol use and drug use was increasing, and ultimately that was impacting on the other residents. We have had some difficulties where some residents have really struggled with the lockdown guidelines and have breached a lot of the rules at times. And although we're very much aware of the difficulties and the challenges and how hard it can be, we also have to be very considerate of our other residents who are very fearful of the virus and are wanting to stick to the rules. And we've got vulnerable women and children, as you can imagine. So we have had to, the twilight shifts have enabled us to have more eyes on the service and to have more staff presence and to help people with these struggles and difficulties. but we have had to make some decisions around whether refuge was the right place for somebody if the rules have continued to be breached and putting people at risk. And I think it's fair to say that our staff have been on site and working face to face and putting their own lives and families at risk, and we've had to really appreciate that too. And you know, staff have been very resilient. We've put additional training on for resilience and for their mental health and their own feelings of and challenges relating to lockdown and coming to work every day, and the frustrations around some people who weren't sticking to the rules. So we have done quite a lot around staff resilience and around team meetings and mental health welfare briefings and quizzes and all sorts of things to keep the morale of staff up, because without our staff we're nothing, you know, so they are very important to us. So yeah, within our community services we have implemented telephone assessments. This was deemed to be the safest way that we could deal with the increase of referrals, but also do this in a safe way. And we've never really done telephone assessments prior. Well, we have if people have requested it, but our rule of thumb was usually face-to-face, and we've shied away from telephone assessments in the past to a certain extent. However, they've deemed to be really successful, and they've been quite positive in whereby we've been able to see we've had more attendance at assessments, and if we've identified that somebody does need to be seen due to the complexities or the level of risk, we are still seeing people face to face, but in a safe environment. All of our offices have policies in place with a kind of layout of the room and how many can be safely in there. And like I say, temperature checks and different things in place to ensure the safety. But we are still seeing some people face to face, even if they are in the community, if we think that we really need to do this to ensure their safety and encourage their engagement with us. Group work, I don't know whether you're all aware, but we do quite a lot of group work programs. So we do that with perpetrators and we do that with victims and children. We do a lot of work in the schools too, and we've had to assess all those individually really, because going into the schools wasn't possible at some parts of lockdowns and things. So we've had to run groups online, and actually we've seen a really good take up with the teenage groups of children, because you know, the technology is their go-to, and they're often much more able on technology than we are at times. So we have seen a real good success with some of these groups, and also because we've been able to be a lot more flexible. So we've been running groups 8 till 10 on an evening, because we've had some people say, well, we've got children and we obviously don't want children to hear conversations. So we've run them on an evening when they've been able to put children to bed, and on weekends and things like that, which again has been another level of accessibility to our pieces of work that we're doing. So again, has been a positive. So it has been a really mixed bag, really. We've seen some real positives come out of this, and I think one of them is communication. With our partners, you know, it's much easier to just log on to Zoom calls and to attend more meetings and be present. And I think also there's been a lot of morale within partner agencies, which has been really good for us, because, you know, it's been difficult times and there's been lots of challenges. I think within our teams as well, within the staff and our workforce, we've seen them all come together and pull together and work closely together to achieve our outcomes still, and it's something that we've been really proud of throughout. And I think there's some practical kind of operational things that we've thought, actually we're going to keep these in place, i.e. the group work on Zoom and different things. So as much as there has been some huge challenges, and you know, we are still seeing a heavy number of referrals coming through, and we are responding as quickly as we can, and we are supporting people as much as we can throughout. We've also seen some positives and things that we might keep in place after COVID. So yeah, the additional funding, what we got from the local authorities, has certainly been very welcomed, because it's allowed us to be more flexible. We've employed more staff. We have put in the twilight shifts, and I don't think we would have been able to operate without that. So that has been a real positive. But yeah, on the whole, all the way through, we've been open to business as normal. Like I say, we're still seeing that 20-25% increase if you were to compare it with last year's figures of referrals. And we're continuing to remind people, and appreciate it if you could also, that we're still here to support families who are affected by domestic abuse.
Thanks very much, Danielle. Brenda Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Hiya, Danielle, and thanks for that. I think it's brilliant that you've managed to keep open, and it's such a challenging area anyway, and with all this added to it, it just makes it more challenging. I just wondered, it's good to hear that, you know, you've got things in place to help the staff, and to make sure that their mental well-being is looked after. But I just wondered if they're going to be having the vaccination soon. Do you know?
So across Harbour, all of our local authorities have contacted us up to now. Hartley Poole haven't as yet, but all of the other local authorities across the regions that we work alongside, so that's North Tyneside, Durham and Darlington, Middlesbrough, Stockton, and then Hartley Poole. We have been contacted by the local authorities in every area, and arrangements have been in place. We haven't heard anything from Hartley Poole as yet, but when we queried this, our commissioners did tell us that there was a plan in place and that they'd be in touch. So hopefully.
Right. Well, hopefully that you'll hear soon, because I think it's really important that you get your staff vaccinated.
Yeah, we do have staff who have got roles in different areas and things, but you know, we are working in social bubbles, but because of certain contracts. So if they are employed in another area of a local authority which is vaccinating, then we've been fortunate enough that some of the Hartley Poole staff have managed to get it through another local authority.
So perhaps we could maybe give a little step up, Joan. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Danielle.
Yes, Danielle, you mentioned 20 to 25% increase in COVID, I think.
Yeah.
Is it stress or alcoholism? I think a lot of issues in Harbour is alcohol. Now, have you detected that in the clients or whatever?
We would never use alcohol as an excuse for domestic abuse, you know, because that, you know, people can have alcohol issues and still not abuse their partners and family members and things. So we would never accept that alcohol was an excuse for domestic abuse. But I think during COVID, we have seen an increase in alcohol. We have seen increases in tensions within families, people who have financial difficulties, everybody under one roof. You know, there's a number of reasons why tensions might have risen and things might have come to a head. And so, yeah, I mean, when I mention alcohol increases, I don't think that's one of the main reasons for the referrals in the first place, but we have seen a lot of victims who have been increasing their use of alcohol and levels of alcohol. So we have been working closely with our local drug and alcohol agencies and mental health agencies. And it's, you know, it's becoming more and more apparent that a lot of the referrals that we work with, domestic abuse is not the sole issue, and there's a number of other issues that we need to work with. We do have some funding through the Home Office, which was given to us to work with those complex cases. And that funding sadly has come to an end, and we're now looking at that with the local authority and with what we've got left in the budget to see whether we can try to run it for a little bit longer on a smaller number of hours, or because it's been really pinnacle throughout this process to have dedicated staff working with our most complex cases. So what the navigator would do with complex cases is they have a much lower caseload, which gives them much more flexibility and enables them to ensure that they're engaging with all the other agencies and reducing those obstacles so that we can actually get near to the domestic abuse, because often the complexities are so high, it's just impossible to deal with the domestic abuse because there's so much other complications and other issues that are present within that family. So yeah, we welcome any further funding from the Home Office, but I'm not sure that's going to happen as now. But we are trying to work with the local authority to see whether we can continue this post, because it's a definite issue, and I think it was a problem before COVID, and it's certainly a problem now. And I think, you know, when I mentioned alcohol, I think that is what we're seeing is the victims who are turning to drug and alcohol, or who are leaning on it, maybe more so, and the mental health has been affected too.
And also to money about home office or whatever. How many employees have you got? Or have you got volunteers on staff?
Across Harbour?
Harbour, yeah.
I think, oh, now you're asking, I think there's something like 240 employees across the organisation, and we also have peer mentors in place and volunteers in place. We have students, placements who come and assist us, so second and third year social work students. So we have a range of different resources. We also have like a lot of bank staff who'll come in at quite late notice and support us, and we relied on them quite heavily during the summer mainly. So some of our students who've completed the placement and worked really well with us have stayed on as bank staff to support us during the difficult times of the first lockdown. And again, we've got that. We've got students in place now and bank staff in place too.
Okay, so good presentation, and your work is tremendous, you know, and then in the community.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and share with you. And if there's anything else in the future that you think you could support with or inform you of, just let us know.
Any come back. Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks. Any other issues on the
Jed, I can hardly hear you. I don't know about anybody else.
You. No, I can't hear you either, Brenda. Is your microphone in front of your mouth?
Yeah, can you turn your volume up a bit?
I can do. I can hear you now.
That's better.
That's better,
Right.
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. There's nothing on 7, 8, 9. Number 10, Please Valley's Health Scrutiny Joint Committee minutes of the meeting on the 20th of November 2020. I accept those. Okay. Update from the meeting on 29th of January 2021. Brenda. Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. So I was at the meeting. I don't know whether Angela wants to take this. Hello, Angela.
Just catching up with my mute. No, absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
you're
Go
right.
ahead.
Okay,
I'll join
well,
in if you want me
yes,
to.
Yes, if I miss anything, please. So we had an update from the North East Ambulance Service, and one of the things that came up was the violence that had been shown towards them, particularly through this particular time. And they've now got things in place to try and combat that. Apparently, it wasn't just the ambulance service, but it was all uniform services that were being targeted. One of the ideas they have, which I thought was a good one, was that the perpetrator in future, instead of getting a custodial sentence, would have like a community sentence, but actually work with the people that they've attacked. So if they'd attacked an ambulance, they would work with the ambulance service for a period of time to see how, you know, how their actions would have actually impacted on them. So I mean, I thought that was a good idea, and I think that they're trying to implement that. And the other thing that came through their presentation was the fact that they too are trying to put in place things to help their staff who are under even more stress during this time. So they are looking after their staff, and they seem to be doing a very good job as far as getting to places are concerned, particularly for the emergencies. They don't do quite so well for the cases that perhaps are not emergencies, but certainly are getting to the emergencies really well. Another presentation we had was T's suicide prevention plan, and that was really interesting. They have quite a number of things in place, obviously to try to prevent people getting into the situation where they're thinking about suicide, let alone going ahead with it. So that was interesting, and that's across the whole of the Tees Valley. And in Hartlepool, we have Cruise. I'm sure you've heard of Cruise before. It's a bereavement organisation, and I've come across it in the past before, but you had to contact them via phone. There was nobody in Hartlepool, and now they're actually in Hartlepool. They have a presence in Hartlepool, so I think we've done very well to get that in. And the other presentation we had was from Tees Esk and Weir Valley's National Health Service Foundation Trust, or TUV as they are known. Excuse me. You will know that they've been through quite a rocky time over the last few years, and they're looking to try and reorganize their organization, basically. So they have a new director of operations, and it seems from what was said, it seems that they're looking at all the things that they've done well, but certainly the things that need improvement. So I think over the next months and year, we're going to see quite a difference in the way that they are working, and hopefully, you know, that the things that they've come across in the past will be put right. And I think that was it. I don't know whether there's anything else, Angela, I've missed out.
I think the only thing, if I can, Chair, that I would add was a presentation by the Tees Valley Clinical Commissioning Group, which was a COVID update for across the Tees Valley. And they confirmed that the pressures were plateauing when we had this meeting, which was the end of January. And that at the time, there'd been 13 sites mobilised by GPs to administer the vaccination, which obviously is well underway now. And they also referred to a virtual ward that they've created to treat COVID patients in their own homes, so they can keep people at home for longer rather than have to admit them into the hospitals. And also they were rolling out the vaccinations to community pharmacists across the patch. So it appears that the second vaccines were going to be scheduled around 11 weeks after the first vaccine. And they confirmed after a question from Councillor Harrison that Hartlepool Hospital was being utilised to assist with the pressures that the trust were facing, but utilised for non-COVID patients, and was exceeding in keeping all the day cases going. So that they were able to continue with day cases and day clinics wherever they could, to keep those trundling along. And the only other thing they said was they just outlined a few myths that people have in relation to the vaccine, to just try and dispel them. That a lot of people were thinking that you would become unwell after having the COVID vaccine. And they're saying that, people don't get COVID, but they may feel unwell, but I think that was quite rare. Vaccines don't contain any pork-related products or alcohol, which I think had been around in the media at the time. There was no evidence to show that the vaccine affects fertility, which I think was something else that was a concern, especially to the younger age group. And the chances of a severe reaction to the vaccine were very, very small. So that just wanted to try and dispel a few myths that were out there that had been in the local media as well and national media recently. But I think that was everything.
Yeah, thanks for that, Angela. Yes, I had missed that bit out because of it being we've already had a COVID update. Yeah, that's why I left it out. But the point about the Hartley Poole Hospital and being used was a really good one, I think, because we are doing our part and more within the Tees Valley. Yeah, thank you, Angela. Thanks, Chair.
Bob.
Thank you, Chair. Angela, when do you think the vaccinations will begin for the under 70s?
I don't know. I presume that people will be starting to be contacted now, I think, because they were hoping to have the first 4 groups of the categories vaccinated by the end of this week, beginning of next week. And then I think the under 70s will be the next group that will be targeted. So I would imagine people will be getting in touch with the under 70s in the next week or so to start the next part of the programme, I would guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela.
Joan?
I suppose just to say that, Councillor Buchan, it would actually be possible for us just to seek an update on that, I think, just to get a little bit of a more current date for that. I don't think that should cause any problems. Our links with the CCG are very good. From the other side, the TUV, Tees Escombe Weir Valley piece of work that Councillor Harrison referred to, it's just to say that members will have had details of the big conversation that that they're undertaking, and it's just for us to say, please circulate it around people please get people to participate and contribute to it, because we're really keen to ensure that the views of Hartley Poole residents who use the services are incorporated. If we don't make our views known, then we can't ensure that we get the best outcomes and service provision for Hartley Poole. So just an emphasis on that, just get out there and circulate and get people to respond.
Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. I can't complain at all. I've had both Jen and I have had our vaccines last week, our jabs last Wednesday. As most of you know, I'm going through chemo again. And at the chemo unit last Monday, I was having my bloods taken and my line flushed. And the nurse said to me, "Have you had your jab yet?" And I said, "No, I'm waiting for my GP to contact me." And she said, "Oh, well, I'll give you a form and you can get it done at North Tees." And I said, "Well, I'd rather have it done at my own doctor's because it's in town and it's less hassle." She said, "Oh, well, I'll give you the form anyway and phone this number up." Anyway, I didn't for some reason. That was on the Monday. On the Tuesday, I had to nip out again to the hospital. When I came back, there was a message on the answer phone, "Can you ring the GP surgery?" Nothing to worry about. So we rang and they said, "Can you come down in the morning at 9:30 for your jabs? You both will get done because I'm classed as a vulnerable person. And because Den and I live together, obviously, it would be in both of our interests to have it." So, yeah, we went down, had the jab, not a problem at all. Our arm was a little bit sore. If you've had the flu jab, you get a little bit of like an ache for about 2 days. The nurse in the practice said, "Take paracetamol 4 times a day. two tablets a day, two tablets 4 times a day. And we did that. We followed the letter. We had a little bit of a fuzzy head the next day, but not a headache. It was just like a little bit of fuzzy. We were both the same, and we're absolutely fine now. And then yesterday, I got a message from North Tees. Could I ring this number? Which I did, but obviously it went on to answer phone. The guy rang me this morning to say, "Oh, it's North Tees. We want to make sure you get your jab." And I said, "I've already had it." So, I can't complain. And there's people that are not getting any messages at all to them, and it's a shame. But our GP, when we went on Wednesday, the nurses, said that they'd done all of their patients in the care homes, every one of them in Hartley Poole. And after Jen and I had been done, they were going to residence homes, just normal people that can't get out and about, and said hopefully we'll be completing that in the next day or two. So, it's down to GP surgery as well. But as I say, we can't complain. We've had excellent service, and it didn't hurt a bit. I didn't even feel the needle going, not a thing. So maybe I'm getting used to it. But I just thought I'd let you know. Okay.
Thanks, Brenda. Angela?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to highlight to members that I'd circulated earlier this week, I think, or last week, and then I've sent another update around this morning about a webinar from the Chief Exec of TUV. It's actually taking place on Monday the 15th between 3:30 and 4:30. So you've got details of that on your email if you want to join him for that and listen to what he has to say. And that's obviously all part of the big conversation as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Angela. Councillor Harrison mentioned the bereavement services, East Valley. 3 years ago, I was trying my best to keep bereavement services in Hartley Poole, and it was closed. I know that the amount was very, very small, and every which way we can't get the funding to open it. I think it was quite, it's troubling because I won't mention names and organisations, but it was a valuable asset in Hartley Poole. So, thanks. Okay, Angela.
Sorry, Chair. No, sorry, Chair.
Okay, right. Any comments? No. So I think we've gone through the agenda. So, to me purpose. Number 11, see the meetings from Safer Hartley Poole Partnership. Receive those. Okay. Nothing on 12, 13 and 14. And the next meeting, final meeting in the municipal year is Thursday, the 18th of March 2021, commencing at 10 a.m. You said p.m. 10 a.m. So look forward to members and visitors to the meeting on Thursday, 18th of March. So good contributions and a good meeting. Thanks now. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.